for an answer for English Literature, Paper 1, Section B. So the example that I've got for you here is from A Christmas Carol. So at this point in the exam, you have already answered on Romeo and Juliet. Don't forget that you've had to rifle through all of your papers. There are loads and loads of questions in there, loads of different texts. So you find Romeo and Juliet, and when you turn over to Section B, you do the same thing again. Look through all of the questions and find the one that you have studied, A Christmas Carol. This is what the question will look like. There will be a little bit of information about where the question has come from. There will be an extract from the text, and then you will see your questions there at the bottom. So this is why we call it an extract to whole text question. First of all, you focus on the extract, and then you come out and focus on the whole text. So if I was approaching this question, I would read this bit first. Read this extract from Chapter 3 of A Christmas Carol, and then answer the question that follows. Really importantly here, in this extract, Scrooge and the ghost of Christmas Present are watching the Cratchit family on Christmas Day. Really important to contextualise that extract there, so you understand where it is that the information is coming from. Now, before I even read this extract, I'm going to have a look at the question. Starting with this extract, how does Dickens present the importance of family in A Christmas Carol? And here I have my AO3 focus, the theme that I'll be focusing on all of the way through my answer, the importance of family. So I'll be looking at how Dickens presents the Cratchits in this extract, and then how Dickens presents the importance of family in the novel as a whole. Really important to keep that in your mind all of the way through. Now, before I read this extract still, look again at where we are. So it's stage 3, we're with the ghost of Christmas Present. I just want to think really carefully about what has happened before this and what will come after it in the novella. That's because the exam board are really interested in your knowledge of the structure of the text. So if you are able to reference using conjunctions like just before this, or following this, or subsequently, the exam board are going to like that. So here we're in stage 3. In stage 1, and with a focus on family, I know that we see Fred, for example, coming to see Scrooge in his counting house and inviting him to the family party. I also know that we see Marley, and that he explains about the ghost who will come and visit Scrooge. There isn't such a focus there on family, but it might be an important point to just keep in my brain. Then I know that we go to stage 2. Again with a focus on family, we see Scrooge's memories. We see him as a boy at Christmas, and if you remember, he's been left at school all by himself, but we see that really close relationship with his sister, Fan. So we understand that his relationship with his father hasn't been great, but with his sister, it has been. We also learn that she has died, and we learn that she's died giving birth to Fred. We also see that he meets Belle, who was to become his fiancée, and we see that relationship falls apart when Scrooge begins to change. So we understand that Belle is sort of the figure that portrays the family that Scrooge could have had. Here we are in stage 3, so we know that we see the Cratchit family. The other important family to remember in stage 3, of course, is his own family. We see Fred's party, we see his family where they're not being very kind about him, they're sort of laughing about the type of man that he has become. In stage 4, we know that we see the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. We understand that we see his family and the fact that nobody is sort of responding to his death. His family aren't interested. We see that the Cratchit family have been really badly impacted by the death of Tiny Tim. And we understand that ultimately, Dickens's message was, well, if you die and nobody cares, what is the point of the life that you're leading? What is the point in everything that we do if there is no family there to support us? So stage 4, I think, is going to be a really important one here. Then we see stage 5, and we understand that Scrooge has changed. completely unrecognisable character than he is in stage 1, and that his family takes him back. They forgive him straight away. We know that he becomes like a father to Tiny Tim, and all of those really important changes are made. So now I'm in the exam, I've sort of settled my nerves a little bit because I've understood where this extract comes in context before I've even read it. I've thought about the question, and I will come back to that in a moment, but I've thought about things that I know from the wider text already. I've started to think as well about what Dickens's message might have been. So now I need to have a look at the extract with a focus on how family is presented. Remember, we're not feature spotting here. We're not trying to just point out where we see a simile, for example, or an adjective. We're looking for where that key theme is being presented, where we're seeing the idea of family. So we'll read through it together. There was nothing of high mark in this. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty. And Peter might have known, and very likely did, the inside of a pawnbroker's. The first thing that I'm going to pick out here is that actually, rather than saying what this family have got, Dickens is really highlighting what they do not have. So they are not a good-looking family. They are not a handsome family. They're not well dressed. Their shoes aren't waterproof. Their clothes are scanty. All of these things sort of highlight what they don't have. So I'll make a note of that here for myself. It lists what they lack rather than what they have. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. And when they faded and looked happier yet, in the bright sprinklings of the Spirit's torch at parting, Scrooge had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim until the last. What I would pick out here as being really significant is this conjunction, the but, this contrasting conjunction. Regardless of the fact that they do not have these things, they are still happy, they're grateful. This listing of how they feel, regardless of the fact that they don't have these materialistic things. The message there, presumably, being that actually material things don't matter. So this really important contrasting conjunction, I will make a note of. And the listing here. I might just make a note to the side about material objects lacking importance. Okay. What I might do just at the bottom here is focus on the fact that the protagonist is being impacted by what he sees here. This change in Scrooge and the fact that Scrooge is representing all of this rich upper-class Victorian society. He is seeing a happy family, grateful with what they have, and sort of not giving thought to what they don't have, and it is changing him. You can see that he's keeping his eye upon them all, that he's impacted by the fact that they are so happy and so content. The message from Dickens, of course, being that family is the most important thing, and trying to show that through the character of Scrooge. So I'll just reference here the protagonist and the impact of seeing a happy family. By this time, it was getting dark and snowing pretty heavily, and as Scrooge and the Spirit went along the streets, the brightness of the roaring fires in kitchens, parlours, and all sorts of rooms was wonderful. Here, the flickering of a blaze showed preparations for a cosy dinner, with hot plates baking through and through before the fire, and deep red curtains ready to be drawn to shut out cold and darkness. There, all the children of the house running out into the snow to meet their married sisters, brothers, cousins, uncles, aunts, and to be the first to greet them. Here again were shadows on the window blind of guests assembling, and there a group of handsome girls, all hooded and fur-booted, and all chattering at once, tripped lightly off to some near neighbour's house, where woe upon the single man who saw them enter, artful witches, well they knew it, in a glow. Here there's a lot of description, there's a lot going on in this final bit, and I've got to be careful because the time constraints are quite tight in the exam. So I'm going to think really carefully about the bits that I want to pick out. And for me, we're seeing here the darkness, where Scrooge is. Outside of the family home, it is dark, it is snowing heavily. That use of pathetic fallacy that show the unpleasant nature of that. And inside, let's look at the juxtaposition in here. We've got the brightness, we've got the flickering of the blaze. It is cosy, we've got a fire, and actually the darkness and the coldness are shut out. That is really important. That juxtapositioning is really important because it shows what having a family is like and what not having it is like. If it's not there, there is darkness, there's coldness. Where family exists, it's warm and it's comfortable. So I'll make a note of that for myself just to the side here so I remember it as I write my essay. So juxtaposition, lack of family is cold, it is dark. Where family is warm and comforting. And as I start to write my essay, I'm probably going to look at the connotations of some of these really key words. The brightness and the connotations of light and a sort of hopefulness and heavenliness that comes from some of these key words. That is the direction that I would take my investigation in later on in the essay. I might also just pick out some of these verb choices that show the excitement surrounding family. So the children who are running out and that they're all chattering at once and they trip lightly off. And this really sort of pleasant family scene that we see. Those might be some important keywords to pick out for myself. Now before I can start to write my essay, I know that I need to pull together a line of argument. A line of argument has got to do a few things, but what it doesn't do is just focus on this extract. It needs to really carefully consider a wider argument. So something that has sort of recurred as I've been talking through and thinking through my ideas around this extract is the idea that actually, if you have got family and if you have got people there who care about you, nothing else really matters. And that is going to be the crux of my essay. As long as we've got family, nothing else matters. Therefore, I can argue as I go through, yes, that is true, because look how unhappy Scrooge is, for example. Look at Fred and his family and how happy they are. Look at the Cratchits and how happily they live. This idea that it can be argued for and against all the way through. So, I'm going to make a note of my line of argument just down here. Dickens presents family as being the most important aspect of life, regardless of circumstances. Well, circumstance. Dickens presents family as being the most important aspect of life, regardless of circumstance. What I've done here with this sort of subordinate clause at the end, regardless of circumstance, I'm alluding to the fact that I will be talking about the Cratchits first, but I'm not explicitly saying it. We don't want to reference the Cratchits because it holds us back in the rest of the essay. It means that we've got to focus on them all of the way through, and we don't necessarily want to. The reason that this is a good line of argument is because it does a few different things. First of all, it references the writer, which every line of argument should do in literature. Here we focus on the AO3 key word, the key theme, key idea that we'll be focusing on all of the way through. But most importantly, it is outside of the text. What that means is I haven't focused really specifically on any one character, any one idea. It leaves it quite wide open there for me. And it might be that I get to the end of the essay and I've changed my mind and something else has come up as being more important than family. But it leaves that option open. You need to be able to argue for and against it. What you don't want is a line of argument that says something like, Dickens presents the idea of family really well. That's not what we're looking for here. It's not controversial, you can't argue for and against it. and it won't allow you to get the highest possible marks. After we've finished this line of argument, that is when we start going into the actual essay, and we'll focus more closely on language analysis and how to structure that part of your essay in a separate video.